Hello, Jax here once again. I just got home. So I haven't read this yet. I know it's been out for a little bit today. But this is my first opportunity to read the state's response to Zellner's subpoena wanting to get the computer from Barb. So I'm just going to go through this like I did last night with the last thing, and read it. And you can get it in its entirety. Let's see, can I copy it and put it right here? Oh, maybe I didn't even need to do that because Christy's here now. So, all right, here we go. I'll start reading it. Oh, geez. Okay, the person's name, I just saw that says John Sheriff, and I just saw Sheriff, and then I was like, Free Sheriff? No, Free Stephen Avery. All right, introduction. Generally, the state does not take a position regarding a defendant's lawful acquisition of evidence held by third parties. However, if the means are not lawful, as is the case here, all right from the get-go, how is it not lawful to have Barb turn over the computer to Zellner? All right, anyway, I'll continue reading. The state must object. Defendant's motion for issuance of a subpoena duces tecum is legally deficient. There is no showing of materiality for the evidence sought during the post-conviction. And defendant's proposed, duces tecum subpoena is legally defective in that it does not comply with Wisconsin statute, blah, blah, blah. The court should deny the request for subpoena duces tecum pursuant to blah, blah, blah. The motion for subpoena duces tecum fails to establish the materiality of the evidence sought as required for post-conviction discovery. In State versus O'Brien, the court addressed the issue of post-conviction discovery. The court held that a party who seeks post-conviction discovery must first show that the evidence is consequential to an issue in the case, which Zellner has done over and over and over again. The evidence is consequential only when there is a reasonable probability that had the evidence been disclosed, that Bobby is a perv who likes to look at naked dead women, the result, and girls, underage girls, the result of the proceeding would have been different. The court defined reasonable probability as a probability sufficient to undermine confidence in the outcome. The court went on to say that evidence is consequential only if the result of the proceeding would have been different. The defendant must show the evidence is consequential. She has. Here, the defendant has not demonstrated how the current state of the, and it's got it in quotes, Dassey, well, you kept saying Brendan Dassey computer, and it's not. It's Bobby's computer. So let's just call it Bobby computer. In the home of Barbara Taddock is consequential. Since the information on the computer now did not exist at the time of the trial in 2007, it could not be consequential and have an effect on the results of the trial. Well, absolutely. Everything that was on there, if you were able to show that Bobby is a perv, it's consequential. The defendant in the motion fails to identify what new evidence is on the computer. Well, how would they know what new evidence is on the computer? Because you won't fucking give her the computer to look at. And what they do know is lots of stuff was deleted around the same times that Teresa Hallback was at the salvage yard. So what was on there then? And you didn't turn over the CD that had stuff on there. And you misled Strang and Buting by saying it was Brendan's computer. You weren't using Brendan in Stephen's case. So Strang and Buting, ineffective assistance of counsel. They shouldn't have never listened to Sweaty Sweat. The defendant in this motion fails to identify what new evidence is on the computer that would undermine the confidence in the jury verdict in 2007. The evidence alleged to be on the Bobby computer in the possession of Barb Taddock did not exist at the time of the trial. The evidence could not undermine the results of defendant's trial in 2007. Finally, there is no showing by the defendant that any material evidence on the Bobby computer was not in the possession of defendant's counsel at the time of trial. The evidence on Bobby's computer was revealed to the defendant when the 7 DVDs were provided 7 weeks before trial. The defendant has failed to meet his burden of proof to show how the current state of the Bobby computer contains consequential evidence that would establish a reasonable probability that whatever is on the computer would have had reasonable probability of changing the outcome of the trial had it been available to the defense at the time of trial. This is an insurmountable hurdle because the evidence did not exist at the time of trial. Well, let's get real here. Would any of this have changed Stephen's jury? No, because you fucking planted 2 people from Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department on the jury. So no matter what, it would have been a hung jury. He was never going to be given a fair trial from the start. Where now if you read or listen to the phone calls that just got posted on Steven Avery Project this morning, where they were hiding Stephen from his attorney. His attorney was trying to find him to represent his client, and they wouldn't tell him where Stephen was. And they're joking about it and laughing about it. So they wouldn't let his lawyer get to him to defend him. Then you had Teresa Halbach's brother, Tim Halbach, lawyer, who is a lawyer, and he was trying to prevent Stephen from getting any legal representation whatsoever. And he was using everything he could to try and block Stephen from having representation. And then you have the press conference that Sweaty Sweat did, where he's talking about all these things that Brendan's claimed happened, which never happened. And now the jury pool is tainted with all that stuff that he said that Brendan was coerced into saying. And the jury used that against Stephen, even though Sweaty Sweat did not bring in Brendan to Stephen's trial. All right, sorry, I'm going to keep going off into little rants, so just bear with me. Defendant's motion for issuance of a subpoena duces tecum for the production of Barb Todek's computer should be denied. Wisconsin law does not permit issuance of a subpoena duces tecum for the Bobby computer in these post-conviction proceedings. And then that's going over previous cases, which I don't read any of that. Finally, the request to issue a subpoena duces tecum is unreasonable. Evidence acquired from the Bobby computer as of April 21, 2006 has been provided. Any other data acquired after the trial of the defendant could not change the outcome of his trial. Really? Oh my God. Conclusion. Defendant's motion for issuance of a subpoena duces tecum should be denied because it does not meet the standards of pretrial discovery, i.e. by demonstrating the materiality of the current state of the Bobby computer in the home of Barb Todek. The motion should further be quashed or denied because the cited authorities for its production apply to civil discovery, not criminal discovery, in the post-conviction context. The defendant is asking for an invasion into the private lives of citizens and has failed to establish adequate and legal reasons for that invasion of privacy. Therefore, defendant's motion for the issuance of a motion duces tecum for the Bobby computer in the home of Barb Todek must be denied. Dated yesterday. Barb, if you have that computer, you better give it to Kathleen. If you're trying to clear your name at all, why aren't you giving that computer to Kathleen? You know she is the only one that can free Brendan. Do you care about Brendan at all? You know, is it more important to you to have Scott? Really? Remember the time you told me that you were thinking of leaving Scott? Going to live with one of your sons? Yeah. I know different than what you tell people publicly. I've been in your home. I know what's going on there. I don't understand why you wouldn't turn over this computer to Kathleen unless you are guilty. Are you guilty, Barb? Did you willingly put Brendan in prison to protect Bobby? Invasion of your privacy? Are you kidding me? You're free. You have 2 homes. You have tons of toys. You get to go hunting whenever you want. You're free. Stephen and Brendan have had their lives stolen from them. Even if you learned of this after the fact, okay, that you weren't a willing participant in this, and that you didn't truly know what Scott and Bobby did, but you knew it was something. Now's the time, Barb. Shouldn't the real people who did this do the time for it? I don't care that Bobby has a wife. I don't care that Bobby has kids. I know you've used that before. Bobby also murdered an innocent woman. Took her from her parents, from her siblings. You at least get to go visit Brendan and talk to him on the phone. They lost Teresa. Teresa's gone. And they don't know what happened to her. If this happened to you, wouldn't you want to know what happened? Wouldn't you want the truth? Now's the time, Barb. It's closing in. You know Kathleen is going to point out what really happened here. So why don't you do Brendan a favor and tell the truth? Give Kathleen this computer. Tell Kathleen what you know. All right, I'm going to look over here on this one to see what people's posts have been. Somebody asked who I am. I'm Jax West. I own Stephen Avery Project. I'm not family. I'm just a supporter. So Karen asking, so can't Zellner sue the Supreme Court or Wisconsin courts because they aren't following federal law to allow the new evidence to have a new hearing? This is the law. This is the way our crappy judicial system works. With these constant, you have to submit this and you have to get approved for that. And then if you're not approved for that, you can try and go around it and go this way. It's maddening. And what it does is it just draws everything out and takes up a ton of time and money. But most importantly, time. Time that Stephen and Brendan have lost. Neither one of them have truly been able to be free men. Brendan went in there when he was 16 years old. Stephen was taken when he was 22. And then out for just 2 years before they put him back in again. They have never been allowed to be free men. Chelsea asks, is he getting another trial from Scotland? So I don't see much about it. You can read, we've got all the documents that posted here on Stephen Avery Project, or you can also go to stephenaverycase.org. They have everything, all the exhibits, everything you want to know about this case is there. Skip Top does a fabulous job of keeping everybody updated on everything. So where we're at is Kathleen wants an evidentiary hearing because of all the stuff that she has. And she's hoping the evidentiary hearing will get Stephen a new trial. So that's where we're at right now. Christy Lynn, you are so good. Janet, why won't Barb hand it over as a mother? I would want to know if any of my sons involved. I agree. I'm tempted if I should text Barb. We'll see how bitchy I get. Depending on how bitchy I get, maybe I'll send her a message and tell her to turn it over just to be a bitch. Christy, breathe. Yeah, I know. This is, I know that's what the state has to say. It's just all bullshit and pisses me off. Because the thing that I keep thinking about is Stephen and Brendan have lost their freedom. And Teresa Hallbeck lost her life. And her family lost her. And it just seems like the people who are being paid by tax dollars don't seem to really care what happened to this girl. Don't care at all. And it's not just the people that Stephen was suing for the $36 million. You know, Wiegert wasn't part of that $36 million suit. Fassbender wasn't. So all these people, or even if you listen to the calls that got posted on Stephen Avery Project today with the queso calls, when it's, I don't know who the woman is, but she said she was a corrections officer who was working the switchboard that day, or whatever you want to call it. She's laughing about how they're keeping Stephen, that they're arresting, and she didn't even call him Stephen. She called him inmate Stephen. You know, just being a bitch. You know, inmate Stephen. And laughing about keeping his lawyer from him. And then telling the lawyer that, well, technically the jail is closed, but we'll let you come, but you can only come till 10. They had nothing at that time when they arrested Stephen. Isn't he supposed to be innocent until proven guilty? No, I know that's not how our system works. But you already knew what he had served time for previously wasn't true. And once again, you immediately jump to inmate Avery. She should be ashamed of herself. And if she's still a corrections officer, she should lose a freaking job. Scrolling through your posts. Sammy asks me, ever think about the fact they might have done it? Yeah, I did. I watched Making a Murderer the weekend it came out. I didn't know anything about this case. I have no dog in this fight. I just watched Making a Murderer. And when it was over, I then started looking up information on it because I knew it had happened a while ago. So where was the case now? And so I did my research. I didn't just watch Making a Murderer, a slanted, one-sided TV show, as guilters like to say. I looked at all the documents. I have been to the salvage yard. I walked the Pam Sturm of God path. I've been to Stephen's trailer. I've been to Stephen's garage. I've been to where the bonfire was. I've been to the quarry. I've been to the Zipperer's home. I've researched this. And Stephen and Brendan are 100% innocent. So if they were guilty, I would say as such, because what do I care? You know, this isn't my family. I don't know them. As Stephen says, every time I talk to him on the phone, he goes where the evidence takes him. And that's exactly what I have done as well. So have I thought about it? Yes, because I looked into everything to see what the full story was. Full story shows those two men are innocent. Francisco says, I sense some huge separation between Barb and her family over this. Barb has never gotten along with most of her family. So And there are issues with some in the family, like her parents, because her parents support Stephen 100%. They never believe for a second that Stephen is guilty of this. And Barb flips and flaps and flaps and flips. You've seen that in Making a Murderer. You've seen that since, where there's times she'll say Stephen is guilty, and there's times she says he's not. So the parents aren't too happy when Barbara will claim that Stephen is guilty. Maybe she helped Bobby clean up after the fact, Janet says. Something that came out today, I know, because there's other Zellner stuff, so I don't know if I need to look into that, because I haven't looked at that yet either, if that has new information in it. But it's going around the whole deer thing, that, so, and I can't keep the story straight because they can't keep their story straight. So I don't know what is the actual story there. But I guess Barb, depending on who you talk to, because Bobby also said that he saw the deer get hit. Barb says she saw the deer on the road and then contacted Bobby to see if Bobby wanted it. He did. And so then, I'm not a hunter, so I don't know these things, but you can't just claim roadkill. You have to get a ticket or something for it. And then the ticket goes on the deer's ear or some crap. And Bobby gutted the deer on the road, which I guess is typical. That you do. You field dress it. I think that's what it's called, right there on the road. And Barb also said they took a certain organ. You know, I don't know. I don't eat deer. I don't know anything about it. And then the deer was brought back to their garage where Bobby hung it in there. And so there are pictures of the deer at the garage and just blood all over the place. And so question is, did that deer go there to cover up Teresa's blood that was there? Because that is where Bobby dismembered Teresa. And then the police never looked at that blood. You know, just, deer blood. You know, if it was in Stephen's garage, they would have done it. But again, they keep pinning everything on Stephen, but everything they're saying that happened right next door at Bobby's. Bobby had all the porn on his computer, all the disgusting things. No porn on Stephen's computer. Bobby has blood all over in his garage. No blood in Stephen's garage. So, and there is a picture, or not a picture, there is something saying that Barb was with Bobby with that deer. So, yeah, did Barb help cover up Teresa Halbach's blood? Stephen says guilty. They wouldn't still be in jail if they didn't do it. You must be new. Because this happens all the time. Guilty people. There are a lot of people in prison that are innocent. They're poor people. And they can't afford lawyers like Kathleen Zellner to free them. And even if they can get Kathleen Zellner, she says it typically takes her 15 years to get them back out. So still being in prison after 12 years does not mean they're guilty. It again goes back to our shitty system that needs to be overhauled. And I believe once Stephen and Brendan are freed, everybody who put them in there should go to prison. Maybe if you started putting people in prison for doing shit like this, they'd stop framing and prosecuting innocent people. Amy Jo says, don't stop fighting for Stephen and Brendan. We're behind you, supporting you all the way. Love from Central Wisconsin. We at Stephen Avery Project will never stop. And we're thankful for all of you supporters who are there with us, because Stephen and Brendan need everybody. Katrina, I think KZ has some more stuff ready to come out. I'm sure she does. I'm sure she does. Sammy says, I've listened to all from both sides, and honestly, I still can't tell what went on. I know that Stephen is a messed up dude. Why is Stephen a messed up dude, Sammy? Are you going off of stuff guilters say about him? Because then again, I'll say, show me the proof. Do you know Stephen? I talked to him on the phone. I don't know him. How is he a messed up dude? Enlighten me. And then tell me what his motive would be for killing Teresa Halbach. Janet, why does she still have the computer after all this time? I don't get it. Chantal says, I personally feel it's a bit extreme to say that Bobby did kill her. Although, yes, if there is evidence, it should be considered, and Bobby should be questioned and have his day in court if need be. Well, Chantal, that's what Kathleen has to do. You have to show that there are other suspects that should have been looked at and weren't. So she previously talked about Ryan Hilgas, Teresa's ex-boyfriend. And now it's Bobby. But see, there is so much evidence showing that it's Bobby. You know, this isn't her just making up a theory like Sweaty Sweat did at that press conference that was illegal for him to do. You know, there's actual evidence showing that Bobby is who they should have been looking at the entire time, because everything they're accusing Stephen of, Bobby did it. Kimberly, why would she have the computer still after all this time? I mean, I'm glad she does for Stephen's sake, but computers get old and slow. I don't think she used it. I think the computer's just been sitting there. When I was at Barb's house, she only used her phone for internet. So I'm gonna assume that the tower was just sitting in a room somewhere. Christy you can't take a night right now. You can't. We had so many weeks of nothing was going on in this case, and now all of a sudden, boom, every day there's something else. Louise says Bobby should be forced to take a lie detector test. Those aren't credible. You can pass them when guilty. So I'm not a big supporter of lie detector tests. PJ says vote the corruption out November 14th. Yeah, if you are up there in Calumet County or Manitowoc County up there, or just Wisconsin in general, Scott Walker, people post on Stephen Avery Project all the time saying that the president should pardon Stephen. He can't. It's a state case. It's not federal. So only the state governor can pardon him, which is Scott Walker. When Scott Walker took office, he said he would never pardon anybody. He's not going to look at a case. He's just not going to do it because he believes in our judicial system. And if they were found guilty, they're guilty. So you could vote against Scott Walker. And then Wiegert is running for sheriff. So you could vote against Wiegert because, I don't know the other people that are running or, what they are, but Wiegert's the devil, and he's corrupt. So vote against Wiegert for sheriff. Gina says, what about how hot does a fire have to be to burn a body down to bones like Teresa Halbach's was found? Well, with the stuff that Kathleen recently put out, it was Bobby dismembered her in his garage, put her body parts in a burn barrel, and then took that to the quarry and burned it there. And then what was left, Scott Taddock put it in an aluminum smelter. So, yeah. And that Bobby would regularly do this with deer, that he would go and burn the deer in the burn barrel at the quarry. Janet says, how does Mr. and Mrs. Avery feel about Barb not handing over the computer? I don't know. They're not online. They don't keep up on this stuff. So they probably don't even know. Christopher says, KZ needs to find hard factual evidence or nothing is going to happen. I believe she's got it. Kimberly says, her having the computer all this time makes me wonder that she knows something bad is on there or she wouldn't want to get rid of the computer. I know, it really doesn't make any sense to me and why she kept that. Because even if she's guilty and she knows stuff's on there, wouldn't that make it even more so that you want to get rid of that? Why would you keep it? Chris says, think you're right about the deer. Bobby never stood to make any money from state, had to get rid of Stephen. And I had never thought of that angle before. Somebody in one of these Facebook Live things I did is the one that suggested that was why, one of the reasons that Scott and Bobby framed Stephen is because they thought the $36 million lawsuit would still go on and now Stephen would be in prison and they would get the money. Patricia says, there is no way any of this new information would be out unless KZ is convinced. So I absolutely believe all this information. It all makes sense. And that's something we talked about in one of the lives from yesterday. Kathleen does not take a case unless she believes that they are innocent and she can prove it. Early on, she took a case and got somebody free who then she found out afterwards they were guilty. And so from that point on, it was she will never take a case that unless she knows for a fact that they are innocent and there's evidence for it. Amy Jo says, it was field dress on the side of the road, would not be much blood, very minimal amount, been through this many years. That's what I would think. So if you're gutting the deer there on the side of the road and dumping out most of its organs, I would think the bulk of the blood would be out there. I understand you then hang it upside down in a garage from the rafters to drain the rest of the blood or whatever, but would it be the amount of blood that's in those pictures? Then I just saw those pictures today. Maybe somebody will get them posted for you guys so you can see them. But it's a lot of blood. And also, do they really just let the blood go all over the garage floor like that? Even if that's what a deer does and there is all that blood, you don't put something under there that would like catch it, so you don't just have dried up nasty blood all over your garage. Even if you're doing this with deer all the time, I wouldn't think you would just want blood all over. Doesn't it attract varmints and flies or whatever? Kimberly says, how many people run the Stephen Avery Project? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 of us. I don't know if they all want to be public because of the attacks that have been made on Amy and myself from people. So I always leave it up to them if they want to tell people who they are. But the 4 people who are moderators of Stephen Avery Project, they were here before I took it over. They've been here from the start. Sweaty sweat sweat. Yep, Emma, that's who he is. Kimberly says, what's her reason to not turn the computer over? What's her excuse? I don't know. If anybody's in Barb's fan group or any of Carla's fan groups, ask her. You know? Angel, did Bobby have access to place the key on the floor? I guess I've forgotten who had access. Well, one of the filings said that it's been noticed that a back door on Stephen's trailer, somebody broke into it from back there. And that Kathleen has said that they think Bobby is who went in there and did the blood. But I haven't heard Kathleen say in anything who did the key or anything new on the key. I still believe it's the cop Link who did it. Shannon says, I wonder if Google Maps photographed the Dearborn barrel at the time of Teresa's murder. Good call. All you junior detectives out there, look it up. Raquel is hi from Spain. Stephen and Brendan are innocent. Here we can't believe a legal system like this. In Spain, if a judge gives a search warrant, the defendant will be all the time the search along with a judge secretary. Never the police alone. Free them. All the support from the old Europe. Thank you very much. Right. Our system is horrible. I say it over and over and over again. Katrina, do Ma and Pa have much to do with Barb? Nope. Maurice, is there a chance that Stephen Avery will get a new trial? Yes. There's the chance, but it could still take years. Because there's this constant, you file this does that, blah, 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 60, 90 days here, 60, 90 days there. So it could still be a while yet. Janet, Wiegert should be running for the hills, not for sheriff. Yeah, and Wiegert just posted recently some bullshit about how there's nobody in Wisconsin that believes that Stephen is innocent and that he was proven guilty. He was never proven guilty, first of all. Never proven. He was found guilty by a corrupt jury. Just because a jury finds somebody guilty or innocent doesn't make it so. They're not waving a magic wand and this is how this happened. They're just a bunch of people like us here on here. And juries don't know a tenth of what we do because they throw stuff out and block it from the jury so the jury can't hear all the actual evidence. Sorry, now my throat's getting jacked up. Have you ever served on a jury? I have. And it was a bunch of bullshit. And I was actually slamming my head on the table. We deliberated for 2.5 days. And I was in the room telling the other jurors they're fucking idiots. Because my case was not a murder case. Possession of an illegal narcotic with the intent to deliver. So a guy was making a cocaine deal. And undercover cops are the ones that arranged the buy. And then the guy was busted. We had video, we had audio, we had everything. The guy was guilty. But there was a person in the jury who wanted to let him go because the legal definition of the word possession means you have complete control over the item. And with this being a sting operation and police were stationed all around, so if something went bad, the guy couldn't leave. Well, the guy can't leave, therefore, technically he doesn't have possession of it. So this person was going to let this cocaine dealer go free for that. So are you going to tell me if we ended up finding this guy innocent, that guy was innocent? No, it's because the jury is a bunch of idiots. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to keep ranting. Jason says, just noticed you're live. What's going on now? I read the state's response to Zellner asking for Barb's computer, where the state is basically just saying that there's nothing on that computer from back then that they didn't have access to back then. So it's not new evidence. So there's, and that this is an invasion of Barb's privacy. Boo-hoo for Barb. Amy Jo says the blood drains into the muscle meat when hung by the head and hindquarters have the most meat, and the blood is held mostly in the body of the deer, even if it was hit by a car. It would only be drips from the cavity of the deer where the organs were removed. Thank you very much, Amy Jo, because those pictures, it's a bloodbath of the blood that's all over that floor. And Bobby's an experienced deer hunter. He belongs to a hunting club with Scott, you know, so it's not like, oh, this kid doesn't know what he's doing, just slashing this deer. So I now firmly believe that that deer was to cover up Teresa's blood in the garage. Kimberly says, so is this a matter of dirty cops, or is this more of Bobby being guilty of doing it? Or do you think both is in on this and pinning it against Steven? Both. So Bobby originally took the car and abandoned it at a dam. And then Teresa's body, after they had burned it, or after he had dismembered it, burned it in a barrel, took some to the Scott's work and burned it there. It originally was left at the quarry. Then once Steven told Bobby that Colburn had come around asking, now he knew, shit, they're looking this way. So what's his best option then? Let's pin it on Steven. So then that's when he went into Steven's trailer, when Steven went to Menards, got some of his blood, went back to the RAV4 that was at the dam, which is only 1.5 miles away from the salvage yard, planted blood there, and then took some of the bones and scattered it in Steven's bonfire, or his pit, and his burn barrel. But there were still some bones remaining in the Dassey burn barrel. So why were Teresa's bones in the Dassey burn barrel? Oh, and then police, I believe the police then found the car because somebody had called it in, and then they transported it to the salvage yard. So you had Bobby and Scott trying to frame Steven, and then you had the police trying to frame Steven. If Steven gets a new trial, will Brendan also get one? They should both be set free. I watched the Netflix over and over and still can't believe they sent 2 innocent men to jail. Shame on those people, says Gemma. They're 2 completely different cases. They were tried for 2 completely different things in 2 completely different scenarios. And Brendan confessed. So what happens to Stephen doesn't automatically happen to Brendan. So Brendan just has to hope that Kathleen proves who really did it. And hopefully that will help set him free. But kind of curious that his mom isn't helping. Joanne says, I was on a trial for 2 weeks. Ugh. I truly think by the end, some jurors changed their minds so we could get out of there. Right? Well, the reason mine lasted 2.5 days is because they wanted the free food. I just wanted to go home. You know, it was obvious from the get-go that our guy was guilty. But they wanted the free lunch and dinner. So that's why it got pushed so long. So most of the time that we were sitting in the jury room, we were doing nothing. Patricia says, would Stephen and Brendan have to go through a full trial even if KZ can prove others are guilty? Yep. Unless she's able to just get a full acquittal, which I don't think Wisconsin's going to let that happen. Amy Jo says, is there a chance Barb can destroy the computer and it will never be used as evidence? I'm sure it is. If she hasn't already, she had law enforcement. Wiegert told her to get rid of it. And how shitty and shady is that? That you're going to tell somebody to get rid of evidence. Christy, the gear being used to cover up blood is 1,000,000 times more plausible than Sweaty Sweat's theory of the magic bleach. Kelly, hi. Did Bobby have an ongoing legal or court case that happened to go away back then? No, but he had a whole lot of kiddie porn on that computer that they could use against him. 2, could she still be detected in the garage at this point? Yes, she could. Sam says, what is the next step? We're waiting. The court has 60 to 90 days to respond to Kathleen's request or her filings. So 60 to 90 days. Kate says, sorry, I might be behind. Are they building a case against Bobby officially? I'm trying to catch up on all this. There's a lot of potential evidence against him. Kathleen is. Law enforcement are just trying to do everything they can to make sure Stephen stays in there. Lindsay says, why is KZ not going after Slimy McSweaty? He's as bad as the rest of them. One thing at a time. I'm sure, right now she's focused on Stephen. And then the other thing you have to realize with Kathleen, she's got other cases, so I'm with, I advocate for 2 of her other cases, Melissa Kalyazinski and Kent Pellegrini. And then she also has a new recent case here in Chicago where this Black man was in prison for over 20 years for something he didn't do. It was overturned. Kathleen's not the one that got him out. She's the one that was now, I believe she's not the one that got him out. She was helping him now sue to get compensation for those years. All the guy ended up getting was like $170,000. That's nothing to lose over 20 years of your life. And so he went to Chase Bank with his check, and the bank refused to deposit his check. And the first excuse he was given is because Kathleen Zellner was also listed on the check. And so they said that she had to endorse it also. So then Kathleen endorsed the check and the guy went back and they still wouldn't take his money. So Kathleen is going after Chase Bank now for being racist. She believes, it's because he's black. And then they're also using like he's a criminal when he's not. It's been overturned. So she's got a bunch of other cases too that she's balancing. Francis says, can Barb voluntarily give it over and it be used, or is there a legal way they have to get the computer? I don't know, because this doesn't make any sense to me. And why Barb wouldn't just hand over the computer? I don't get why you have to go to this legal route. Because if it's her property, she should be able to just hand it over. So does that mean she's been asked for it and refused, and this is the only recourse that Kathleen has? Joanne says, is there more details about the burned remains? Based on some morgue, it states a fire has to be so hot to cremate the remains. It was said a burn barrel wouldn't get that hot. It would, actually. The burn barrel would, and then they took it to Scott's work for the aluminum smelter. So if you're not going to believe, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying the general you. If someone's not going to believe that a burn barrel could burn her down like that, then why would they believe that an open bonfire did? At least when you're in a burn barrel, it's that, metal, that it's going to get even hotter in there as opposed to dirt on the ground. I know they're going to say the tires got put on there as an accelerator. Jason says, so clearly there's a ton of family issues we don't know about. Can you shed some light on this? I don't know what to say there. I don't know. Somebody would have to ask me something more specific. I don't just want to say something. David says, thanks for doing this. Been wondering what was going on, but is it okay to be doing this? So yeah, it's okay to be doing this because this is all public. All these documents are public. So I'm just discussing the public stuff. And then I discuss stuff that I know personally. I am in contact with Kathleen. So when I have a question on something, if I can say or do it, I reach out to her. And so she tells me yay or nay. Elizabeth says, what is in that computer? I missed that. Go to StephenAveryCase.org and you can look up and see. The computer has a whole lot of porn, whole lot of young girls, murdered women, and then there's a file that said Teresa, a file that said Hallback, a file that said Stephen, a file that said DNA. I'm scrolling through messages I've gotten to see if it's something that I should be discussing on here from the moderators. I don't know if any of them are on this right now. Okay, sorry. Scrolling. All right, let me scroll through. Why can't he get into an out-of-state court? Randy asks. Because there's a certain order of things that you have to go through this court to get to that court, and then you have to go through that court to get to that court. And then sometimes you go from this court to this court, and then this court says no to something, so then you have to go back down to that court to then go back up. It's horrible. Janet says, does Earl own the house now? If so, why doesn't he let Kathleen do some tests on the garage? Earl's not in Barb's old house. That's Chuck. I know Chuck has had Kathleen to his house before. So we don't know. Maybe he already has. We don't know all that Kathleen, we only know what Kathleen is letting us see right now. I'm sure there's more. So, and I don't see why Chuck wouldn't cooperate with Kathleen. Shannon says, how do you know what was on the computer? Was it taken in at one time? Shannon, back then, Barb's computer was taken, or Bobby's computer was taken. And there were 7 DVDs that came from it and 1 CD. The state only turned over the 7 DVDs. They did not turn over the 1 CD back in 2006 when this trial happened. Kathleen just got it this year in April, the CD. And so that has the stuff that's on the computer, what they can get, because there are segments on that hard drive that have been removed. And those dates that are missing on the computer correspond with the different dates that Teresa Hallback was at the salvage yard. Jason says, sorry to be more specific, why would Bobby want to frame Stephen just cause? In my opinion, Bobby committed this crime because he's a sick pervert. He did not commit this crime with the thought of, I'm going to frame Uncle Stephen. I think that's why the vehicle was taken to the dam and abandoned there, and that the bones were taken to the quarry. It wasn't until law enforcement started looking at the salvage yard that Bobby then decided, probably with Scott, again, me speaking, my idea, my theory, that their best way out of this is to then frame Stephen for it. So I do know that most in the family did not like Stephen. Many of them told me they didn't like Stephen. They said that he was mean to them. And my opinion on that was because you left him to rot for 18 years. He was in prison for something he didn't do for 18 years. And other than his parents, nobody came to visit him. And they'd be I think Barb went and visited him on occasion. But nobody else went to visit him. And so when he was out for those 2 years, yeah, was he the nicest to them? Probably not. Can you blame him? How would you feel if you were in prison for 18 years and your family didn't come visit you and your family did press saying that you were guilty? So if Stephen was mean to them, do you really have any sympathy for that? So that's my belief of Bobby. Joanne says, but Barb's computer may help her son's case. Slim chance, but if any chance, a mom would do it. Right. Elizabeth, why Barb doesn't want to give the computer? We don't know. And now I'm at a current comment. David says, what's up with the Colburn guy? Please say something about him, his crooked little twisting testimony. Did he move the RAV4? That's what I believe. And that's something that Sean, he's not on here now, but I don't think he is. But Sean is the one that always has the best questions, I always say, is how come nobody has checked Colburn's cell records on where it pinged the night that he used his private cell phone, not the police radio, to call in those plates before the car was found? Why is he calling in the plates? And then He is the one that said to dispatch what the make and the model of the car was. I believe that Colborn helped move that vehicle from the dam that is 1.7 miles from the salvage yard, drove it down 147, and then went through the quarry that is directly behind the salvage yard and drove it through the quarry to put it at the very back of the salvage yard, which is within 7 feet of the quarry. You also have to remember Colborn is the one who is working in the jail when another officer called and said, "You have the wrong person in prison for Penny Bernstein," and told him who the correct person was. And he did nothing. He did not even file that report until the second time they were going after Stephen. Really? So Colborn is all kinds of guilty. And then every time Link was going somewhere, Colborn was right there with him. Magic bullet found in the garage after how many months? Magic key. Colborn. So Colborn's part of it. Amy Jo, is Colborn the cop that ran Teresa's plates? Yes. So he's the one that you see on the stand, and they play his private cell phone, which is something I noticed too. When you play these queso calls that we just posted on Stephen Avery Project today, somebody, it was either Poggle, Sheriff Poggle, or Wiegert, is telling somebody, call my cell phone from your cell phone. So why again do they keep wanting to do these calls where it's not recorded? Elizabeth, what is your theory? What happened to Melissa? Teresa, I missed the answer. My theory, and now my theory from the last time I've said it, now my theory has been streamlined some. I believe Bobby knew Teresa Halbach was coming that day. When he got home from work, he surfed porn and all his disgusting stuff that he's looking up of mutilated women. He watched from his window her take a picture of the vehicle, and then he waited until Stephen went in his trailer. Teresa left. He followed in his Blazer, got her to pull over, told her that he wanted to sell his Blazer, and asked if she could take a picture of it so it could be listed in Auto Trader, which is called a hustle shot. Teresa did this, and actually when she was going to the Zipperer's house, that was a hustle shot. So she would have scheduled appointments, and then she would have, if she would just be driving and she would see a car that was parked in somebody's yard that had for sale on it, she would go to the door and say, "Hey, I'm with Auto Trader Magazine. If you would like to get your car listed in our magazine, I could take a picture of it. Here's the information on how you could pay for this," and they would already have the picture and put it in the magazine. So I believe Bobby asked her for a hustle shot. When she went to get her camera out of the back of her vehicle, that's when he clocked her. And that's where you have some of her blood spatter on the tailgate or hatch or whatever you call it in that vehicle. He then threw her body in the back of her RAV4. Her head was along the one side, and that's where you have the blood pattern on there that was blood and hair. And then he took her back to his garage, and he pulled the vehicle into the garage, killed her in the garage, dismembered her in the garage. But before he did all that, he then took her vehicle to abandon it at the dam. And then that's when he is seen by the fuel guy and Blaine and Stephen, I believe. Then he abandoned the vehicle, and either he walked back or Scott Taddock took him back. Because remember, they crisscrossed, saw each other, and they were both just happened to be going hunting. They're not going hunting together, but Bobby's going hunting at Scott's house, and Scott's not hunting at his house and going the other place. Whatever. So Bobby field dressed Teresa in his garage, threw her parts in a burn barrel like he would do with deer, and then took her to the quarry where he burned her there. And then, to try and burn it further, Scott took it to his work, to the aluminum smelter. So that's my belief. Jason, could someone just buy the PC from Barb? Bet you they could. She's always wanting money from supporters. Randy, I never heard about a firearm, just bullets. What is the firearm? Which firearm are you talking about? What they're saying Teresa was killed by was a .22 Marlin long rifle, which is a very common rifle. There was one hanging over Stephen's bed in his trailer that was owned by Raleigh Johnson, who owns the trailer Stephen lived in. That was his rifle. And Bobby had one that Scott went to his work and was trying to sell Bobby's rifle the week after this. So that's the only firearm that I know of. Patricia says, can't Teresa's family and colleagues describe her usual car keys and fob? I don't know. You would think so. But they seem to want to, they're so set on that Stephen did this. They don't seem to really want to cooperate. Shannon says, wow, you got shut down. I don't know what you're referring to. Oh, okay, it's saying the video stopped, but we are still here. So I'm still here, but all right. I think I covered enough, and I've been on for an hour, so I'm going to end this here, but I could pop on at any minute because I think there might be something else I haven't read yet. So maybe I'll be back. Thank you very much.